Sam Villa here.
And Andrew Carruthers, Education Director.
Andrew, great to be with you, my friend. We've been doing a lot of fringes lately, and I think we're starting to see a change in terms of the direction of fringes. What have you been seeing?
Well, I think before we were seeing a lot of very structured fringe, cutting it into a direction so that it laid in a very specific space on their face. Also, the texture was maybe softer on the edges, but it wasn't heavily texturized.
Yeah. So the fringes seem to have a little bit more weight to them.
Yes.
Seem to be a little bit more geometric, if anything. Would you agree with that?
Sometimes, because I think the contrast is then we also have the chewy textures that we're seeing in those high fashion magazines too that we've been talking about.
Right, so you think that we're leaning more towards these edges being a little bit more etched into, a little bit more chewy type of texture to it then, huh?
Yeah, because even those chewy textures, it's not like you're thinning them down, you're actually purposely leaving some density in areas to give it that very visual separation.
Beautiful, it's almost like the fringe has been vandalized.
I love that word, Sammy.
All right, so let's go through now. Also, side sweeping fringes. Like I'm thinking of Taylor Swift, I'm thinking of Britney Spears, and you're seeing all these girls. Everybody seems to be, a lot of those girls, those glamour girls, those kind of like a romantic rebel, so to speak. But what they're looking for is more side sweeping.
Well, and it's interesting because it's not just one direction, is it?
No, that's a great point. It moves one direction, it moves the other. Kind of fits in what we've been talking lately about is double identity. So let's start out with a side sweeping fringe and share with our friends how we go about and create a side sweeping fringe that has the ability to create double identity, moving from one side to another side. So let's take a triangle section here. This is our triangle section. So you could see that would be our part, that would be a part. What I want you to notice from a top view, look at that top view, how that part is always on a diagonal. Most clients, when they go through and they part, thank you, Andrew, what they do is they part their hair straight like it's on a box. Always encourage your clients when they're going to part their hair and want to move it side to side that the part's more on a diagonal. I find it really sits a lot better that way. All right, so let's go through. Now look at the length. Okay, the tool I have in my hand is the blending shear. Why? Because I'm going to release the length with a blending shear so I get a very soft edge. I think a lot of times we come in and we cut these fringes blunt. And then what we're trying to do is just soften the edge. So immediately pick up a blender, placing your blunt blade on the bottom. We're going to take a diagonal forward section. We're actually going to stand, in this particular case, she's going to go left to right. So I'm going to stand here. I want you to read this, and I want you to see where does that bend. Just hold it lightly in your hand and see where that bends. So I'm going to cut her fringe right about that length there. Place my hand in diagonal. Look at the top view. So when you take a look at that top view, the angle we're cutting is actually diagonal. From that point, I'm going to place my blunt shear in. I'm going to slide out. Now look at the angle of the shear. It's diagonal. It matched that white comb. We close, we backstroke. So at no point, maybe in the past, you see me weave this through. But I'm not going to weave this through to go in and release the length. Now let's take a look at this section. When you do that, just simply by going in and just backstroking on that, you're going to create a very soft edge that's going to have the ability to move. That's what I love about this particular technique. Let's take our next section. Now I'm going to recommend, once you have this, just pick up the underneath, okay? Fold up and look for your guide. From the top view, you can see that guide. Coming right back through, once again, diagonal. Okay, diagonal line, placing that shear on that diagonal line, coming through, and you're going to close from short to long. You can see how I'm making this area short and the front is getting longer. Backstroke. Now, why do we backstroke? The reason you backstroke is so that you get a very, very soft edge, guys. That's why we're backstroking. So keep cutting till all that hair comes off. Now watch what happens. When we take this fringe, I want you to see what we've created here. What we've actually created is we've created an edge that goes short to long that moves in this direction. You can just start to see that. Now when we comb this fringe, this direction, you just start to see it go more into a side sweeping fringe. And you get a really nice control of that in terms of the way that it moves. Now how do we get it to go the opposite direction? You're going to stand on the opposite side of the part. So now watch what we're going to do. Take that same triangle section. Okay, and the idea here is I want to create more of a point to it, Andrew. So it's got a triangle or somewhat we refer to as a chevron or something that's cut more on the bias. Go diagonal forward, standing on the opposite side. Now I want this fringe to move from her right to her left. So we stand here. I know where my length's at. Don't need to take much off, but I'm going to place that once again, that diagonal line in, closing and backstroking that until all that length comes off. Now remember, in the past, what we've done is we've gone in and we weaved the blunt blade through.
Right.
Now, Andrew, any other tips that you can think of in terms of when we want to sweep it to the side? One of the things I can think of is you got to get this hair to bend when you want something to move to the side. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, if it's too heavy, too bulky, too blunt, then it's not going to move.
Excellent, great. Now let's take a look at what we got. Look at when I do this, you can just start to see how I've got that diagonal going on both sides and you get more of a tip of length. Now watch this fringe. Now this will have a natural tendency, Andrew, to move in this direction.
Yeah.
So you can see how we've gone through and we've been able to really create a cool fringe that moves from one side to the opposite side. Let's just release the length, Andrew. Take a look at this. And that's what I love about this, the ability to move from one side to the opposite side. Now, the idea too is when we go in and we have fringes, because we're talking about a fringe story here. I know some clients, they have cowlicks and things, and what we've talked about, how do we take care of that and how do you blow dry that?
Well, I think the really important thing is to train your guest on how to release those growth patterns. And, you know, Ashley here luckily had a brilliant hairline, but we still went about it in the same way. Your best friend when it comes to this is these right here. It's the fine teeth on our cutting comb, because that, with the pressure of the back of the comb, is going to give you maximum tension. You bring in the blow dryer right behind and you really press this out. If you start with soaking wet hair, because we don't want the bonds to have already started to form, you start with soaking wet hair and really press back and forth with fine teeth in the back of the comb, you're going to have a lot better preparation for a fringe like this.
Oh, I love that, Andrew. That's a great hot tip. Now, let's take her into what you called a little bit more of a chewy edge to it, and where I kind of tend to think the fringe has been vandalized, if you will.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and see you do something, okay? In terms of that, creating that. How would you go about and create that?
So the thing that we have to understand about that kind of fringe is, again, it's not like it's just texturized, because a lot of times we might come in and just start slicing it apart, but Ashley has finer hair. So if I went through and just started slicing this apart, all I'm going to have is looser and looser and looser. So we need to create something now that actually has a little bit of structure to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a horizontal section in that same triangular area that Sammy just barely parted out. So I'm going to let you take care of that for me. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and brace here. And actually, I'm just going to step to this other side. We're going to come here and brace with the wide teeth of the comb. Now, why do you think I'm doing wide teeth?
Because I think you want it to be a little bit more loose. Would that be correct in saying that?
Yes.
Okay, great. But I love what you just said, brace. And almost like the wide teeth, or it's capturing the hair too.
So what we're going to do is we're going to come in that horizontal section, and I'm going to start taking very large and deliberate pieces out. But see, I'm still doing it with that blending shear, Sam.
I love that. Matter of fact, see, most people will take a blunt shear and go in and create that, and sometimes it gets a little bit too chunky.
Right.
And they're going back in and softening and softening. So I love the fact that you're using the blending shear and working with that.
Well, we've talked a lot about being deliberate with the texture that you want. Don't cut a straight line if you don't want a straight line in your end result.
Beautiful, Andrew. So now, oh yes, I can just start to see that.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. That by itself is too much, right?
Okay.
So as we take this now,
beautiful,
and we drop this down.
From a top view, we can see horizontal sections. Good.
Horizontal sections.
Ah, keep
brace
them
in
separate.
again. Keep them separate. Do not pick up your previously cut section.
Why not? Tell me why.
Because if I pick up the previously cut section, what's going to happen is I'm going to take away the texture that I've created underneath.
Great point, Andrew.
The other thing is, you'll notice I went in this direction here, diagonally across this way. So to contrast it, flip, now I'm going to go diagonally in this way.
Excellent, brilliant. So I noticed that you said that. So it's almost like you're cutting a diagonal etched edge one way, slightly diagonal.
Yep.
Okay, and then diagonal the opposite way, slightly diagonal. Does that give you a little bit more of an etched edge when you do that? Is that why you're doing that?
Well, yeah, it gives me that chewiness without it looking too overdone. Because the thing is, you know, you could come in and just create a bunch of blunt holes here, but it's not going to have the softness to it that we want on the edge.
Good. Now I notice you've got the teeth on the top, so I notice when you cut, you'll pull the hair out. Is that just to get the hair out of the way that you've cut?
That's exactly what I'm doing. Because, yeah, some of those hairs that we've cut will sit in between the teeth of the shear.
Good.
And also I'm making sure that the teeth are facing in towards her forehead, because what a lot of people don't know is when you're using a blending shear, you're actually influencing the hair in a certain direction. So if I flip them the other way, I'm gonna make the hair wanna come out away from the head.
Excellent, great. That's one reason why we made these blending shears reversible, my friends. You control the teeth. You can control where the texture is placed. You can control where the bluntness of the blade is placed. Beautiful.
Now,
Love
Sam,
that.
look at how those different textures are starting to play
Awesome.
over top of each other.
Beautiful.
So what do you
Last
think is
section.
going to happen with this?
I think you're going to go turn it over and go the opposite direction again. The opposite direction. So it's one diagonal, one direction, another diagonal. But what I love about it, it's just slightly on the diagonal now in terms of that.
Yep.
Beautiful. Now, do you refine anything with a blunt shear just to kind of get some of the little hairs that you miss with the blending?
Yeah.
You ever find that you do that?
Absolutely, because sometimes there's just going to be one of those pesky little hairs that just keeps running away from the blade of your shear, and you will have to come back in and just do a tiny little touch-up detail.
Great. And remember, that's because you're working with a blending shear. And you're saving yourself a lot of time just going in and visually seeing that. Remember, cutting visually requires more time. Cutting with technique requires less time. And I don't know about you, but we've been talking a lot how clients want in and they want out. Time is critical in today's world as a hairdresser and as a consumer. Wow. Brilliant.
So as you can see, she's got baby fine hair, but you have very, very deliberate, chewy visual
Whoa.
texture.
Look at this, guys. Oh my gosh, Andrew, this is incredible. Just love the approach that you took on that. And then look at that. When we just do that, look how she's got a little bit more of an etched edge to that, and just brilliant in terms of how you do that. Okay, recap that for me because this is awesome. Recap it for me.
So we're still using that same triangle from the high point of the head into just at about the corner of the eyebrow, right? And guys, another hot tip when it comes to fringe is don't force the hair where it doesn't want to go.
Great comment. Great.
So we made sure that her hair would naturally live in those places before we divided off that section. We're going to take a horizontal section across at the fringe, drop that down. We're going to start diagonally in a certain direction. Does it matter which direction? No. So we'll start in a certain direction, then we take another horizontal section, lay that over, go the opposite direction, finish with a third horizontal section, and again reverse. If she had more hair, maybe a few more sections even.
Oh yeah, based upon the density.
Absolutely.
Oh man. What you see, this man, Andrew Carruthers, he's got a lot of gifts to share with you. If you ever see Andrew Carruthers out on the road and you see he's coming to your area, I want you to purchase a ticket and go see Andrew Carruthers. Remember,
Thanks, Sam.
You drive your bus behind the chair in the salon. Sometimes you got to change those tires on the bus. When we talk about that, that's all about education. Once again, Sam Villa and
Andrew Carruthers.
We care about you, and this is all about you, and we will continue to be here for you. Take care, my friends, and we'll see you again.
Love you guys.